Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And tonight I'm talking to Narendh Ganesh, and we're going to be talking about the court system in South Africa and how compromised it is. And, well, our guest had a horrible surprise last night, and we'll be talking about that first. So, without any further ado, let's get our guest on. Here we go.
Good evening, Scott, or good morning to you, rather. Well, it was actually my dad and myself. You know, we were, yes. And this was the fifth house invasion in as many years, would you believe? And it's quite surprising. You know, one is one too many, but five, and one resulted in a murder of my aunt. After they've ransacked the house, they shot the poor lady at point blank and killed her, you know. So I'm not sure whether I'm a record breaker or a record break-in at this point in time. But it was a very traumatic incident. You know, two black males entered my house. I was in my study and they approached me from behind, screaming, "Where's the money?" You know, with some expletives. And I always keep my firearm at arm's length, you know. And as I reached for my firearm, they dashed out of my room. And in the passageway, the hallway, they met with my dad, whom they punched, and he lost his balance. I mean, he's 85 years old, you know. No. And he had a sum of money in his pocket, and they grabbed that, and they wanted to know where's more money. And at that point in time, you know, I had to get off my balcony, scale the balcony, and get round the house in the attempt to get them as they leave. And they ransacked my dad's room, took in more money. But as they got out, I attempted to fire 2 shots at them, but they had already scaled the wall of the house and they were out. And it was quite traumatic, you know. As much as we are, as I explained to people, we are experienced victims.
Yeah.
But each episode is still as traumatic as, and even worse than the last. But, you know, it's indicative of the times we live in South Africa.
Now, just a bit of background to this. I understand that your dad had gone to the bank and these guys had followed you home.
followed my dad home because we've got video footage that about 30 seconds after my dad began reversing his vehicle into the yard to get it to the garage,
Yeah.
they entered the property, waited for him to enter the house, and then they entered. Well, my room and my study is in a different wing of the house. So I think they came in there first, expecting him to be there. And in that moment, it's the funniest of things that I explained to people over yesterday and today. For the very first time, I was not scared of having a gun pointed at me, having had it so many times before. And this time round, I was not going to, succumb. I was going to go for battle royale. If it cost me my life, unfortunately, that's the level we have reached.
Wow.
But I was going to fire back, but they escaped from my room before that. And that is why the reason why we believe it is so. When they took the money from my dad while he was on the floor after they punched him, they asked, "Where's the rest of the money?" Now, nobody but my dad would have known that he had drawn money,
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, and quite coincidentally, there was another incident on the bluff yesterday when a lady was accosted while she stopped at a stop street by two assailants as well. And the good thing about that is she gave chase after that, and she rode over one of them.
Good.
And he has been arrested. I wish he hadn't, because I didn't want him to be alive.
Yeah.
It's a sad indictment of life that I have reached personally, that I want to kill anybody who enters my house now.
Now, what's a
as
legal situation there? Because I understand if they invade your home and you shoot them, you could actually be put inside for murder, even though they're in your home and pointing guns at you.
Look, if you shoot them in your home, the first procedural step is that you will be arrested for murder, in inverted commas. Naturally, it has to go through the investigative process. But if you can show that it was in self-defense and in defense of your life or that of your family, I don't think there's going to be a conviction. But obviously, if you shoot the person in the back, then there's a problem. And the funny part of our law at the moment, if they come into your house, steal your television set, and are escaping, you cannot fire at them. Or if you do, it will be an attempted murder case that will be opened. They say the law is an ass, and, well, there's proof of it.
Well, maybe the thing to do is shoot them in the back and then turn them over and shoot them in the front.
Yeah, look, there's many ways to kill a cat and a thug in South Africa.
Yeah.
But look, let me put it this way. The people are hurtful, if I can use the phrase, of the crime that is pervading this country. And there's going to come a point when people are going to take the law into their own hands, not by choice, but by necessity.
Yeah.
Look, I've been a victim 5 times. It's 5 times too many. There's going to come a point when I will have to retaliate with maximum force, and I don't want to do it. It's not that that's my psyche all about. What's my psyche all about? But it's come to that if they invade, I'm going to shoot to kill. I've had enough.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Now, how many invaders were there?
This time round it was 2, but there were, I'm not sure how many in the getaway vehicle that was parked outside the property.
Wow, okay. Wow.
The first time it was 5. And, the sad part is after the 3rd invasion, my mom died a week later because they had traumatized her. They hit her with the butt of the gun.
Oh, no.
And stuff like that. So, look, we've paid a price for these house invasions with lives. And thank God yesterday we came unscathed in many respects, but many families have paid the ultimate price. And do we need to live in a country where the law supersedes, the stupidity of the law, as I put it, supersedes that of the criminal? Does not supersede that of the criminal. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And how is your dad?
Quite shaken, but fine. Thank God. Like I tell people, we are very experienced victims suddenly, you know. And sadly, at 85, no matter what it is, you don't do that. And my dad has given to the humanity so much all his life.
Yeah.
without fail and without prejudice. So, you
And
know,
what lessons have you learnt about getting, when you come home now in future, you're going to change the way that you actually access the house and perhaps put security up, or what have you decided?
look, we've got fair security. We are with the security company, with alarm, with burglar guards and stuff like that, with walls surrounding. But unfortunately, no matter how well secured you are, and you've got to understand, and the police officers did tell me that this is not a random thing where they just decide, look, let's go to this house and do our business. It is very well planned, very well executed because they train themselves. They have meetings with, it's a syndicated form of crime. So there's a group of people, the watchdogs, the people who gives the information. They even use Google Maps to determine the location and the structure or the way the property is situated. So the precautions we take, you know, you can't 24/7 be looking over your shoulder. Sometimes you got to live the natural life. And quite often you are caught off guard. And it is in the moment of vulnerability that they attack. And, when they saw my dad, they punched him. And that is a disarming tactic because you get disorientated for the moment. And once you see the gun, you fear grips you, you freeze. So that's the tactic they use. So look, I'm saying this publicly. I will pay short shrift to the law if I have the opportunity to kill any of these thugs in my house. I make no bones about that. I've reached a stage where enough is enough. And the law can challenge me. I might be a fugitive from the law and run from it and make them pay more prices for it. But I'm not going to succumb to the stupidity of the law that I cannot kill someone who's putting my life in danger or that of my family.
It's a really sad situation when the country goes to a stage where people just give up on the authorities because the police service is so cuck.
Yes, exactly. And look, without generalization, there's an element of very good police officers and there's an element of rogues within the system as well, because quite often they are fingered in crimes themselves.
Yeah.
And, our forensic aspect as well. It takes sometimes 6 months for the return of forensic evidence. And that delay, in so many ways is a very frustrating aspect of South African life. I mean, rape kits, for example, in a matter of rape, it takes so long for it to get back that it frustrates the complainant.
Yeah.
And it's very disheartening that we have a government that does not understand that if we take a hold of crime, a lot of other aspects will start falling in place because people cannot afford to live in fear of their lives every minute of the day.
Yeah. Well, I've got a guy in the side chat here, Ben Potgieter, who says, I've had 13 perimeter attempts this year. 13.
Yeah.
Now,
No, I can understand that, you know.
now, just talking about the incident, you obviously went to the police and reported what had happened.
Yeah, well, they obviously, through my security company, the police were summoned to my house and they came, they've taken the statements. The investigating officer has contacted us. They're going to contact the bank tomorrow for footage because this had to be an inside job at some point. There is no possible way after they struck my dad and he fell and they took the money that they would have asked, where's the other money? They knew the amount and
Now,
they knew that there was other monies available for stealing.
I actually saw a video just yesterday where an African woman who works in a bank was being beaten up by a group of people after it turns out that the people that she was informing were caught and they dobbed her in as the informant, telling them who was drawing large amounts of money. And
Yeah,
I might actually play that video clip if I can get it up because this only happened yesterday. So this seems to be a new tactic. When you go to a bank, the staff member who's actually paying you the cash tips off people, probably by phone, that you got a lot of cash on you, and then they go and target you. Let me
Yes,
just,
and,
yeah,
and it
here's
was
this.
about the money.
Yeah,
It was about the money because when they came and invaded my house yesterday, the cell phones, my laptop,
yeah,
there were other electronic equipment. They didn't touch it. They wanted the money only.
yeah. Look, I'm gonna play this video clip and look, I do have to warn you, it's a bit rough, because these
Okay.
guys are getting stuck into her. Now, Narendth, you won't see it, but everybody else will, because obviously I can't share it while I'm playing it. So
I think I know which video you're talking about.
yeah,
I've seen it as well.
she's got a red dress on, but this is
Yes.
actually becoming very common in South Africa, and this is just a warning. This is what they do to someone who does this in the townships. It's called mob justice, and I think in some ways that's the way that people have got to go. Okay, here comes the clip. So I'm just waiting for it to kick in. Good old computer. Being slow. Here we go. Okay, now you'll see the woman in red. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Now the woman in red. Okay, now the woman in red in that clip was the bank employee who was caught telling her associates outside who had large amounts of cash, and that's how she was dealt. It gets worse, but that's how she was dealt with by the community that she lives in, and it's called mob justice. And because there's no police service, that's what happens in South Africa now. Okay, now you mentioned you spoke to the police. How were they? Were they sort of good about the thing? Were they sort of, don't waste our time? What was their attitude?
Look, I didn't have a problem with the way they managed taking the statements and stuff like that because it was purely administrative at that level yesterday, because the statements and stuff had to be given to an investigating officer who will be assigned to the case. But here's the thing: of the 5 incidents that we have had, the one with the murder that occurred was vigorously investigated, and the suspects were eventually caught and convicted. But of the other 4, nothing came of it, and I'll tell you why. Because there was no serious injury at that point in time, and no one was killed. Now, what they don't want to invest too much of resources in investigating something where there isn't any deaths or serious injury to the victims. It becomes incidental. They'll take the fingerprints and stuff, and they will arrest them when they arrest them, not as a concerted effort. They claim resources are low. I can understand that with the mismanagement in our bureaucratic departments. But the police were fine. The investigating officer was polite. So, but then on the other hand, they know us so well now. It's as if, they're expecting the next hit sooner rather than later. At my particular home, 5 in 5 years is much too much.
Wow. It's really quite coincidental, but when we got you on to speak tonight, we were going to talk about the court system in South Africa. And then the night before we actually have you on, this happens.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's actually very disturbing. It's very sad. Now, look, okay, let's get on to the subject that we originally were going to talk about, which is the court system in South Africa.
Right.
I actually had a very interesting discussion with Justin Lewis on Monday. He's a forensic investigator into banks
Right.
and stuff like that. And he raised a really, really disturbing point. And he said that the banks are so tied up with the law today that often when they give you a notice to get out of the house because you haven't paid your debts, that notice hasn't even seen a courtroom. It's just something they produce and they pretend that you went through the court system. And Johan Root has evidence of this. We had Johan on in January this year where the court documents have been fabricated by the banks. And this is in South Africa. So just about everything in South Africa is broken today. I mean, even to the point of the banks. But if we talk about the court system itself, what is your perspective on the courts in South Africa today?
All right. Just as a aside, last week I attended an anti-corruption conference in Mshlanga, and I was seated right next to Ms. Shamila, Advocate Shamila Batoy, who is our director of director of the National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA. And it has come about in that conference that the syndicated aspect of crime is across the board. So the idea or the notion that banks are involved in fraud and corruption is nothing new. It is the sophistication of how the system is manipulated. And look, you've got rotten eggs throughout the whole food chain. The court system per se in South Africa, in a way, is broken. Not to take away anything from very able jurists and prosecutors and stuff, but I think we need a revamp of our legal and judicial system because, I mean, just to illustrate, the Zuma matter is gone for over 15 years. Now, that does not make legal sense, doesn't make normal sense. How can a matter be postponed and postponed and postponed? The Estina farm fraud matter with the Ace Magashule has been postponed for a year down the line. You see, the system is so broken that people have lost confidence in the judicial system, in the legal system in South Africa. And, you know, seeking good legal advice these days costs, and the man in the street cannot do that. So if you're well connected, you can easily go through the net of the legal system or get top advocates and counsel to delay, postpone your matter until either natural attrition takes over or the monies are laundered or the proceeds of your crime are laundered. So my opinion is it is terribly broken, and it is the saddest indictment on South African society, which everybody is paying a price for.
Well, look, I look at what's happening in the United States of America. And for those who are listening who don't know about this, but Donald Trump is currently facing 4 criminal indictments, which have all just suddenly miraculously turned up since he decided he'd be running for president next year. And the latest ruling by what they call a democratically oriented judge was that the state is going to literally impound his business and sell it off. I'm talking about the whole Trump organization. And they're doing this because they've made up a whole lot of things about the way Trump ran his business. And it's becoming totally, if that's happening in the USA, can you imagine what's going on behind the scenes in South Africa? I mean, South Africa is so much worse than the USA.
Yeah, no, I've been following the Trump matter in New York. I know that the Trump organization is under scrutiny for civil suit because there's this case to bring down the organization as such, and they need a receivership, I think, that has to happen where they will impound all his businesses and properties. But as a comparison, and you know, I got angry at Donald Trump at once when he said South Africa is a shithole. But I think he had merit at some point in saying that. So if that's happening in America, which is supposed to be a more sophisticated society without any impairment on South African values and society, but we have now inherited or developed crime to such a level that our court systems, I mean, look, in any system, every man has a price. And there's no reason to believe that in South Africa it is any different. And that is why we are where we are. And we would have relied on the legal system to protect society, but it's not happening. And I don't think it will happen in the near future as well.
And the thing that disturbs me, Narendra, is that if you look at the actual selection of judges in South Africa, the guy who heads up the committee that chooses advocates and basically appoints them as judges, the guy who heads up that committee, believe it or not, is Julius Malema. I mean, seriously?
Yeah.
What does that say to you?
And if you watch the question and answers that occurs, it's quite hilarious. But this is one of the things that I'm trying to get a movement that politicians should not be involved in the appointment of judges or the interviewing of judges, because at the end of the day, the president. Yes, because everybody comes with a political motive, and if you don't like a judge, knowing full well that you might at some stage appear before that judge, especially like in the Constitutional Court, you might ask questions that are negatively impairing the credibility of the particular judge or person who wants to be a judge. So, and Julius Malema, like you said, of all people in South Africa, a person who is, in my opinion, a racist, to be sitting on a panel to decide who should be presented to the president for appointment. It makes mockery of the system, actually.
Well, when you consider the fact that he sings "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer" to 90,000 people at his 10th anniversary of the birth of his party, and he does that without any fear because the South African Human Rights Commission have ruled that that is not hate speech. And then within 24 hours, you start having a spate of farm attacks with people being killed, white people being killed. But no, as far as Ramaphosa is concerned, well, that's just South Africa. There's nothing happening here targeting the white population, especially when you consider the things they sometimes do to farmers, which is just appalling. The whole system is broken.
Absolutely. I was gobsmacked when I learned that it was not considered to be hate speech. And I wrote a scathing article about that, asking Malema, the potatoes that he eats, is it not made from the white farmer at some point? Or the clothes that he wears, was it not manufactured by perhaps a colonialist that he opposes? So you see, it's political rhetoric that he has taken to a level where, in a way, it has become acceptable. But it is abhorrent, it's repulsive, it's repugnant, all the adjectives negative with regards to that. And I think it's up to civil society. And I think AfriForum is appealing the court judgment. They've taken it to the Court of Appeals. Because, in my opinion, without even going into the merits of the case, the very fact of the utterance, the word that you use, kill means a crime on its own. So, and Julius Malema is a tragedy to South Africa, especially in getting the new generation to lead South Africa into a new world, into a new dawn, if it were. So, and look, the South African white farmer, forget the aspect of apartheid for the moment, because we've used it too much in terms of excuse and reason. The time has come when we have to stop that nonsense. And people like Julius Malema does not have the ability or capability of understanding that. He is more buoyed by his political ego than by the reality of what is happening in South Africa. I mean, Zimbabwe is a classic example when Mugabe wanted the white farmers out, and yet Emerson Mnangagwa is now calling them back because they realized that they did not have the ability at that point in time to farm and produce food for the people. So it's a tragedy, and I would sincerely hope the majority of South Africans stand up against such nonsense that we are being exposed to.
Yeah. Well, when you consider the crime rate, which is just exploding, and I just heard today that the government is saying that it might default on paying salaries to government staff next month because it's running out of money. And imagine if they can't pay those SASSA payments to, what, 13 million people in South Africa.
Yeah.
There's going to be anarchy.
We're heading that way. We're certainly heading that way. And I'm more than convinced that it's not that we do not have money. It is being mismanaged. It is being stolen. And just as the point that we were talking about, the court case, the court system, you know, in the murder of Babita Dukaran, the lady who whistleblowed on the Tembisa hospital fraud and corruption.
Yes.
Now, 6 people were, the hitmen, 6 of them were convicted and sentenced to long jail terms. Yet, the perpetrators, the people who called the shots, who ordered the hit, are still not arrested. It does not make sense. So, you know, it gobsmacks me to the point of no return that we have a system where you got the person who killed and who was ordered to kill. Shouldn't you have got the names of the people? So the syndicate run deeper than what we think it does. There are people high up in the pecking order who are involved in the corruption. So we have money. I mean, think about this. If we take fuel, for example, it's about 6 Rand 12 cents on a liter that the government makes per liter.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a few 100 million liters of fuel consumed per day in South Africa. Multiply that by 6 Rand 12, or between 6 Rand 12 and 6 Rand 30 cents. There are billions going into the coffers of the government per day. So that's just on one product. Forget VAT and other products that are taxable and stuff like that. And you know, so the government has money. It's just mismanaged and stolen at a level that we, you know, it boggles the mind. So that excuse I will not buy.
Well, just talking about these syndicates, De Ruyter, who was the CEO of Eskom, he wrote that book. And
Yes.
he talks about how there are 4 big syndicates who basically are running the crime in Eskom. They're very, very well organized, senior people involved. In fact, I think the head of security at Eskom was actually suspended because she was implicated in one of these syndicates. Because she was head of security, she was able to let crime gangs know when it was safe to go in and do certain things, which they did. But the thing that disturbed me the most is that he made the allegation that there were 2 members of parliament who were directly involved. And one is David Mabuza, who used to be the deputy president, and the other one is apparently Mantashe, who's the minister for energy, and isn't that interesting?
Yes.
But this is how high it goes, the crime. And if you look at the Zondo Commission, R1 billion spent on producing this document, which implicated a whole lot of people. You know, the only person who's actually been arrested so far and is going through the court system is a whistleblower, Angelo Agrisi. He's the only one.
Yes.
No one else has been called into the courts. I mean, that to me smells like a rat.
No, and even Angelo now has been fingered with some criminal act as well. So, the game gets quite complicated. And just also on that point, at the anti-corruption conference that I attended, it came about that the syndicates are now so sophisticated that even the highest abilities of investigators are being shown up, because these guys use such sophisticated methods of laundering money. In fact, an example was given that one of the big launderers of 30 or 40 million rand used his golf membership to launder money. Now, the nitty-gritty was not explained, but they eventually found out that through a golf membership, he was able to laundered that money with associates within the golf club. So you see, these people have learned so many ways because there are so many loopholes in our system, and yet it is those monies that are crippling the country and the people who deserve it the most. We've become a socialist country in one sense, in that, as you mentioned earlier, 13 million people are dependent on social grants. Of course, a good number of the senior citizens deserve it. They paid their dues to the country. They should get something in return. But we want to have all sorts of, the COVID grant is still going on. We paying monies to people who are using the 350 rand they get to do their hair instead of providing food for themselves. So, this corrupt aspect, there's no political will to change the ethics and the morality and the values of this country to a workable solution. Everything is about what I can get out of the system.
Well, there's not one African country that's got it right since they were decolonized. Not one. They've all gone the same way. So
Yeah.
it's got to be a cultural thing. Under the colonial system, you had a legal system. Yes, there were things that were wrong, like apartheid. But if they used meritocracy and just had the right person for the right job, doing the right thing without corruption, South Africa today would be it would be an amazing place to live. But what the ANC government have done is they've just looted and pillaged it like it's a feed tray. Their heads are so far in the trough. I'm surprised they survive, because they don't take a breath to breathe. They're just stealing,
Yeah.
stealing, stealing.
Yeah. You know, if the ANC had actually kept to the promise of 94 and they followed it to the letter, we would have had a good country if everything was done according to what the promises were. But of course, they were only a movement at the time, and to take over the reins of a country was a different story altogether. The men and women of that era are long gone, who promised so much. The Mandela administration was a honeymoon administration, just getting used to the new system and with the government of national unity. But since the end of that era, from 99 onwards, you could see the gradual demise of South African society. To an extent, Thabo Mbeki held the reins, but that loosened up. And then further to that, as the Zuma regime took over, we could see the degeneration of South African society. And look, Ramaphosa per se, I don't believe he's worthy of presidency. But then again, who else is in the South African government? And you mentioned De Ruyter's book and the two cabinet ministers, one as the deputy president and the other the Minister of Energy Affairs. Here's the funny thing. They take an allegiance, swear allegiance to the Constitution of South Africa to protect the citizens. And this is what they do. And whilst it's still allegations, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And look what ESCOM has done to this country, despite being warned many decades ago that if we don't pay attention and careful attention to our energy system and matters, we were going to pay a dear price. Our economy is failing as a result of the load shedding that we are experiencing daily. And now there's more systems that are failing, like the water infrastructure, the sewage infrastructure. South Africa is becoming a failed state.
It
I
is a
wouldn't
failed
like to
state.
say
It has failed. It has failed. Now look,
the
I
patriot in me to stop just before that, but I want it to work. I mean, we are a work in progress, but look where we have reached, what we have reached. It's a sad, sad
yeah.
indictment.
Look, I had a live stream 2 months ago with Jeff Corbinelli, and that live stream has had nearly 1 million views. And
Wow.
in that live stream, we were talking about the Stellenbosch Mafia, and I'm talking about Johan Rupert. We were talking
Right.
about the PIC, which is a pension fund which is managed by the ANC government, and we
Right.
were talking about Ramaphosa. And the scam that's been conducted through the PIC is quite extraordinary, and it involves the president. And these are no longer allegations. These are actually what's going on. You
Yeah.
know obviously about triple B double E, where you've got to have an African shareholder with 51% in big companies if you want to do business with the government. Now, and they're now trying to push that into other areas, for the record. But what it turns out, and these are the allegations which are corroborated. What is actually happening is that the Rupert family, as you know, are very big in the banking system in South Africa, and in particular with Rand Bank, and of course their association with the PIC, which is a huge shareholder in the Rand Bank. I think it's got something like 700,000 shares. It's got about 23% of that Rand Bank, which controls banks like the FNB and stuff like that. So the government association with the banks is huge. Now, what has happened is that this is the allegation, and it can be supported with evidence, that some of the very big pensions of incredibly wealthy people, and I'm thinking of the Surtees and what's the other one? It'll come to me just now, but these guys had billions of rands locked up in the PIC, in the pension fund. Now, when they died, because South Africa is so cactus, that money wasn't claimed. It was just sitting there. So this kind of caught the attention of the people at the PIC, because it was earning profits. I mean, there was still earning profits as these pension funds. And what they've done is they've taken those profits away, put them into a separate account, and used that money to pay companies for the shares, which are then given to people like Ramaphosa.
Yes.
I mean, that is happening now in South Africa. People's pension funds have been looted. The profits have been looted to cover the cost of the shares that these guys are just acquiring free of charge. And that's how Ramaphosa became a billionaire. That's corruption.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of people who are previously state employees are worried about their pension.
Yeah.
You know, the aspect of they losing their pensions is a real thing. And look, Ramaphosa, for example, has been involved in the Pala Gate incident, you know, with regards to his millions of dollars that he had stashed in a mattress. And, you know, at this point in time, he hasn't been fingered, he hasn't been indicted on the matter.
Well, the Reserve Bank said he did nothing wrong. Crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, how would somebody have that kind of money, cash, without declaring it to the South African Revenue Services? Because that would have been liable for taxation, as would anybody's business of that nature.
Yeah.
So, yes, look, from my point of view, I do not believe Ramaphosa is straight about his dealings and his businesses. He has a right to have private businesses. I mean, he's a citizen of the country as well. But he's obliged to declare them. And all his shares that he had obtained, not only from the Ruperts and stuff, from other mining conglomerates. And you must remember, the conglomerates give very little consideration for the people on the ground, the poor people.
Yeah.
For them, it's maximized business, monopolization of the economy, so that they have control. And if you have money, you control the politicians with money, and that's how it's working now.
Yeah, no, exactly. And on Monday night, just a few nights ago, I had a live stream with Justin, and that live stream's gone completely viral as well. And below that live stream, I was actually it's very interesting how I got this document, but it's the bank statement of CR17. Over 100 pages. I'll give you the link after this live stream so you can download it.
Okay.
And
I'll be interested.
It's over 100 pages, and it gives the names of the beneficiaries, the people who actually got money from this slush fund, the date they got it, and the amount they got. And what went through the slush fund in the lead up to the presidential elections with the ANC was hundreds of millions of rands. And the allegation now being made and being investigated is that money came from Glencore. Now, Glencore is
Wow.
the biggest mining house in the world. Glencore last year were fined $1.1 billion by the US courts for admitted corruption in Africa. This is happening at the very time that Glencore were working with Ramaphosa before he became president through the Optimum coal mine, and
Yes.
Ramaphosa was the actual executive in charge of investigating what's going on at Eskom during that particular time. Ramaphosa had a coal operation called Shanduka, and
Yes.
Shanduka and Optimum were being paid huge amounts of money by Eskom for coal during
Right.
2007, 2008, during that period. And so
Right.
Ramaphosa has got a really strong tie-in with Glencore. You know, there's that history. And it happened during
Yes.
that period that Glencore was being called out by the US for corruption. What's interesting is that South Africa never joined that case. They could have actually, South Africa as a country could have said, hey, me too. But they didn't.
Yeah.
They just ignored it. So there is so much going on, not just within the government, but within these big corporations who are basically getting favors in exchange for bribing politicians like Ramaphosa. And it was that money from, there's one particular trust. I've forgotten what it's called right now, but it's in the document. You can't miss it. Hundreds of millions of rands, and apparently that is the front for Glencore. So
Wow.
Glencore using this trust fund to channel money into Ramaphosa's slush fund. It was all being done with the approval of Johan Rupert. The bank that was used was the FNB, which is owned basically by the Rand Bank, which is again the Rupert and the PICs run that bank. So they had everything covered, and that's how.
Look, his history goes back to when he was the Secretary General of the National Union of Mine Workers.
Exactly,
So he
yes.
made all his contacts there, and it extended. Because look, after 1999, when he didn't become president, he got into the corporate world big time, and that's where he made all his associations for later in his life, and that's where we are today.
Yeah. So when we talk about the court system, we've got to understand that the fish rots from the head, which is what's happening in South Africa, and the court system is basically beholden to the politicians, and so there is really not a court system at all. The justice system in South Africa is completely broken.
You know, over these years, Scott, if you think about it, we have lost trillions in terms of corruption,
Yeah,
but not a single really high profile person has been convicted and are in overalls. Not
yeah,
one. So it is reflective of the legal system, for one, and two, it's reflective of where society has reached, what South African society has done to itself to reach the levels that we have. You know, incidentally, if I may just add, I'm leading a political party next year in next year's elections called the National Independent Congress of South Africa, NICSA. And I
okay,
was motivated to do so not because I want to lead a political party or I want a position in some kind of bureaucracy, but I'm compelled to do it with a term that you used earlier on that is missing in South African society. It's called meritocracy. It is as a result of cadre deployment. It is a result of nepotism and cronism that we have, you know, depleted our capabilities, our competencies in virtually every sphere of South African endeavor. And because we've removed meritocracy, triple B, double E is very prominent. And I cannot see a company surviving if they have an incompetent person whom they're just paying as a token to be there. And, you know, with the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, it makes it even worse. There are certain sectors that are going to be impacted because you've got to have a certain quota of people. And yet, ironically, our constitution speaks to we the people. It doesn't speak to we, the black people, or the Indian, or the colored, or the
Yeah.
white people. It speaks to the people, and and it speaks about a non-racial society. Paradoxically, we are more racial now than we've ever been. You know,
Yeah.
and
Well, look at
I hope
BEE. I mean, that's just a disgrace.
uh, that's a tragedy. They had GEAR, RDP, now radical economic transformation. The very term radical economic transformation is gravitating towards a specific group of people, the elite, the well connected. It's
Mm.
not about the person on the ground struggling to make ends meet. So, this concept of radical economic transformation is nothing but a pie in the sky meant to enamor certain aspects of the black elite. But I can tell you this much, and without having a poll or a referendum, that not many people are now wanting to support the ANC, especially the rising middle class, because they realize that they are taking this country down the tubes.
Well, look, I've got a prediction for you. And I predict, as a result of the CR17 bank statements being released and out there in the public, and I know that tens of thousands of copies are now circulating around South Africa, you're going to have a lot of people basically coming out and saying, yes, I was bribed. Because what happens is that Ramaphosa pisses someone off, and a few years ago Ramaphosa bribed him, and because Ramaphosa has pissed him off now, and there's his name in this document, he's going to say, yeah, I was bribed. I was given all this money to vote for Ramaphosa. And I predict that by the end of this year, Ramaphosa will have to resign, because the election of Ramaphosa will be shown to be corrupt, that he was bribed, and all the evidence is there in those bank statements, and there are over 110 pages of them, by the way, and it covers a period late 2016 right through 2017. And as I say, enormous amount of money was flowing to the individuals, and you can see their names. The names are actually in the bank statement. So you can actually
Right.
pinpoint the recipients of this bribe. And I reckon Ramaphosa will probably flee the country with all his money. He's probably got most of it out of the country anyway, and become a refugee in some place like Canada or whatever. But I think his time is done. I think he's gone. And I think that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, because of what's been going on, she has been tipped off, by the way. She does know that there was bribery and corruption taking place, and that we have the evidence. I would not be surprised if she doesn't break away from the ANC with a substantial number of the members of parliament, and either set up another party, that's all you need in South Africa, or whether you basically have a complete split, between the two sides of the ANC, the Ramaphosa side and the Zuma side. And I think the Ramaphosa side will be in a complete state of gemors or mess once Ramaphosa is forced to step down. Because 2024 is going to be really interesting if this all happens.
Yeah. Now, look, while I would like your prediction, I also believe that his sycophants will gang up and protect him, because they need him to be president as in the next term for various reasons. And there's been another party that has been formed called the ISANCO, which is a Zuma affiliate.
Yeah.
It's been registered as a
Well, Ace
political party.
Magashula's set up a party too.
Yes, yes. So what is happening is these little pockets of parties that are being formed in terms of trying to consolidate Zuma's possible return. I don't think he himself, but also on the other hand, Nkosazana Zuma, I think she's reached the end of her reign in so many ways. She's been in parliament right from the start in 1994. And I think her geriatricness has to give in now.
Yeah.
But look, you are right. Ramaphosa has been fingered in a lot of nonsense. He's also not the kind of president that South Africa needs. You need a South Africa with a president with political will. to the benefit of every South African, and I stress this because at the moment South Africa is gravitating towards a black South Africa, and we've got to call a spade a spade. Yet, the greater contributory aspect of South Africa is all races. While our tax base is declining and our handout base is increasing, the important thing is you've got to have a president to change the political strata, as it were, the policies, take away cadre deployment, take away. Look, the DA has won a case against the ANC that they have to declare the list of cadres who they deployed.
But aren't they appealing that now?
Yeah, they're appealing it. Sorry, and but I think I wouldn't know what the merits of the appeal is, but it would be, why would someone want to appeal something that is supposed to be transparent, which they claim they are?
Yeah.
So until that, the gravitas of meritocracy is crying out loud in South Africa, because we have lost so many people. I mean, you are an example that had to leave our shores. There are thousands of others with great skills who have left our shores. Why leave the country that was once the breadbasket of Africa? I mean, we are so strategically positioned. Our climate is so beautiful, and yet we have to run from the very country that gave us life.
Yeah.
So Ramaphosa and his clan have not done South Africa any service. They've done us a great disservice. And for whatever pretensions he has about being a nice guy, politically he's an absolute weakling.
Yeah, look, he's a bullshit artist. I always say if you gave Ramaphosa an enema, he would fit in a shoebox quite easily. Because that's what he is. He's just full of shit.
Well, he's
no
used to
integrity.
getting things in the back door. He's always used to getting things in the back door, so it's all right.
Now, okay, look, we've been chatting away about the court system in South Africa and a few of the topical issues related to that. How can they fix the court system? What have they got to do?
The term that I used earlier, radical economic transformation. We need radical judicial transformation. Radical, in the sense that sometimes they have to have appoint dedicated courts. Magistrates and judges have to be appointed not by political affiliation or friendships, but by merit. And the delays in the court procedures have to be changed. There has to be serious change in the manner in which proceedings happen.
Now, let me put this to you. Let me put this to you. Narendh, maybe in Africa, the court system as it used to be in the colonial days, which is what this court system is based on, can't work in Africa. Maybe the operative thing is to have a people's court where the community choose, let's say, half a dozen people who sit down, and if someone's caught committing a crime, they collectively, as a people's court, decide what's going to happen to that person, whether they're incarcerated, if they and seriously, the death penalty has got to come back in. So if someone commits a murder, they just, that's it, they get hung. And if you had a people's court in South Africa, that would mean the community would decide how justice had to be meted out, and it would no longer be a single person who has his own obviously things happening in the background that might change the way he actually hands out a response to someone coming before him. What are your thoughts of a people's court?
Look, to an extent, it might be merited, in my opinion. Only so because, look, the kind of crimes we're talking about, okay, leave the murder and rape aside. Let's take the corruption and how it impacts on the legal system. The rules of evidence, the kind of evidence, and the nature of investigation. Now, a people's court, they might not have people. How do you get to the base of the evidence? Like, for example, you're talking of the bank records. You've got to get competent people. So I'm not sure if it's going to work. While there is merit, and they probably could do it in rural areas, for example, where the chiefs actually do mete out justice for people there. But in the urban areas where the society is more, in inverted commas, sophisticated, I'm not sure if a people's court is going to work.
Well,
And
it works
we
in the
haven't
US.
evolved,
They've got
but we
people's
haven't.
courts in the US.
Yes, but uh, for the big matters, I mean, we still they still do have a Supreme Court in the
Oh,
United
yes,
States.
absolutely.
We've got the Constitution Court. There are certain matters that merits sophisticated judicial officers to handle it,
But petty
and
crime, for example,
yeah, no, that I can understand, as long as
this
there's
is why you
merit
have
in the
mob
selection of
justice.
the people. Yes, yes. Uh, the answer with mob justice is in South Africa they equate it to vigilantism, irrespective if it's done in an orderly manner.
Yeah.
But uh, look, my opinion is it will never come to fruition only because uh, all these politicians know if that happens, they're out of a job and they might not be alive as well.
Well, I can tell you one thing that would stop corruption in its tracks if you had a fair and balanced judicial system. And that is that anyone who's caught guilty of corruption has all their assets seized and sold, and they walk away with nothing, not even a washing machine. They basically lose everything.
Yeah.
That would stop
Look,
corruption in its tracks.
South African society is crying out for swift justice in many of the cases because it's impacting on society as a whole. It's encouraging the younger generation to get involved in crime because they believe they can get away with it. So there's got to be a radical transformation of the judicial system. I
Yeah.
mean, to have someone like Julius Malema decide on who our judges should be speaks volumes as to where we've reached. And some judges, their decisions and their writing of judgment leave much to be desired. I mean, we've got a good judge president in Chief Justice Zondo, and but below that there are certain questionable appointments based on
What about
politics.
the public protector?
Well, if you see the new one that
That's
has
what I'm
gone for an
talking about.
interview,
I mean, she can hardly put two sentences together.
uh, I mean, look, if we had an impeachment of a Section 9 public protector, it speaks volumes to where we've reached. And Mkobane, for all that she was worth, she's cost South Africa billions, over 164 million rand
Yeah.
for cases that she brought frivolously, and she lost. She took on 71 judges made rulings against her. So, we need to look at it very, very introspectively, very closely, but with the will, not only political will, legal will, to make sure South African society runs smoothly. And until that changes, we should forever hold our peace for anything
Yeah.
nice to happen. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that the court system in South Africa is too far gone. I think the only thing that can happen is a complete radical change of the party that's running South Africa as a start, and then from there to basically just strip down the entire court system and start again. Because the people who are playing the roles of judges, many of them are just as corrupt as the people who they're got in front of them. But in a much bigger way.
Well, I'm helping write the script for that change for next year. I hope it works. And if it does, then I might myself have to prove a point and see if I can walk my talk as well.
Yeah. Well, look, good luck with that, Narendh, and look, keep us informed on how that's going. You've got
Okay.
contact with Marlena, because
Right.
we'd certainly like to talk to you before the 2024 election and see what's happening in that area. But yeah, look, have a great evening. And is there anything you'd like to just say in wrapping up this live stream?
Yeah, look, for all the viewers, South Africa is a country of people, not races. We've had a past that we'd like to forget that caused a lot of discomfort and pain and suffering. But if we want to look ahead, we can't look back. And the present is of at such a level that there are people who are consumed with self-aggrandizement, self-enrichment, that it actually prejudices the rest of South Africa. And I'm sure many expats throughout the world who have left this country can understand what I mean when we say we are we're a country of people. And if you just look at the Rugby World Cup against Ireland, the country was in so many ways united. It's weird. And yet when the game's over and we go back to the routine of daily life, then all the nonsense filters back in. So my appeal to everybody is to look at South Africa as one picture, one good picture, that we can be the country, that rainbow nation and that land of the milk and the honey. We are actually. It's just that the people running it are making it into the disaster that it has become.
Yeah, and I would just make the observation that I think the fake mainstream media in South Africa have played a devastating role in covering up a lot of the sins of the ANC, while people like Penny Sparrow and Vicky Momberg, who were actually imprisoned for basically that they were speaking out when they were under duress, but the mainstream media covered that so extensively you would think that they were mass murderers. I mean, the distortion of media in South Africa is extreme. I don't know if you have any comments on that just before we wrap up.
Yeah, I agree. If it is white on black in inverted commas attack, then it has to be massive.
Yeah.
But when it's black on white or black on Indian or black on colored, then it isn't. That's why I say the racial factor still exists more so now than ever before. And for whatever it's worth, mainstream media, look, I must just add, the Sunday Times in South Africa, they've got some very incisive reporters on some matters. They report very incisively, and the investigative reporters are pretty good. But then everybody is not privy to the purchase of that newspaper. But mainstream media per se, yes, I would blame them for a lot of our ills in what's happening in South Africa.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Narendh. And look, do send our best wishes to your dad, and I hope that he recovers fully soon. And we will have him in our prayers as well as a Loving Life community.
Thank you so much.
All right,
and
mate.
you have a good month in Down Under.
Okay. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Well, cheers.
Bye for now. All right, guys, that was Narendh Ganesh, and we've had Narendh on a couple of times, and it's always nice chatting to Narendh, and my gosh, what a terrible thing happened to his dad. Anyway, this is South Africa, I guess. Guys, I'm going to go out tonight once again with Ons vir jou Suid-Afrika, because our focus tonight was very clearly on South Africa. So have a great evening. Don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we'll be having another live stream on a different subject. In fact, if you go to lovinglivetv.com, you'll be able to see what tomorrow night's live stream is all about. Have a great evening. Take care, and bye for now.
Uit die blou van ons hemel, uit die diepte van ons see, hoor ons ver verlate vlaktes waar die kranse antwoord gee. Ons sal antwoord op jou roepstem, ons sal offer wat jy vra. Ons sal lewe, ons sal sterwe, ons vir jou Suid-Afrika. Ek wil antwoord op jou roepstem, maar nie offer wat jy vra. Das bloed op die plase van boere wat hulp vra. S'nags hoor jy die sirenes, maar jy kyk ander pad. Niks daarvan op TV, net soms in die koerant. Daar's kieme in die water, Eskom gee beerdkrag. Rioolstank in die strate, daar's 'n oorlog wat wag. Gery maar op ons paaie, mense maak net wat hulle wil. Arm blankes in kampe, maar jy bly liewer stil. Studente gooi met klippe en skole lê plat gevee. Ek sien rye huisies, geverf in pink en blou. Regstellende aksie het alles hier verbrou. Maar gate in die paaie bring die soustrein nie van stryk. Die volk word brandarm en die ANC word ryk. Ons antwoord